You've seen the yin-yang symbol a million times, right? We think of it as balance, light, dark, good and evil. But what if it's way more than that? What if it's actually a detailed scientific blueprint for how life itself works? Well, today, we're diving into the incredible work of Dr. Wu Xiangje. He's a modern master who's taking this ancient idea and looking at it in a whole new light, not as some vague philosophy, but as a practical medical science. And he kicks things off by asking four really big questions. First up, why should we even bother with something this ancient in a modern hospital? Dr. Wu isn't just taking it for granted. He's asking, does this idea actually do something that modern medicine can't? It's a question that really forces us to justify its place in the world today. Then he gets even more specific. If we are going to use yin-yang, what does it actually mean when you're a doctor treating a patient? He's not interested in some fluffy idea of balance. He wants a concrete medical definition. What does a yin or yang problem actually look like in the real world? Okay, now for the one I think we're all wondering about. Is any of this real? Can we find a physical, measurable basis for yin and yang? Is it just a cool concept, or can we actually point to something in the body and say, there it is? Because, as Dr. Wu argues, if you can't, then a little skepticism is probably a good thing. And finally, this is where the rubber meets the road. So what? What's the practical impact? How does thinking this way actually change what a doctor does day to day? These four questions, they really set the stage for a completely new way of looking at yin-yang. All right, so how does Dr. Wu even start to tackle these huge questions? Well, he goes right back to the absolute beginning. For him, yin-yang isn't just a way to label things, it's the actual engine of creation. It's the process that takes us from the simplicity of two to the mind-boggling complexity of all living things. This one sentence, this is pretty much the core of his entire model. It sounds simple, but it's like a formula that describes the entire cascade of life, from a single cell all the way up to a fully functioning person. So let's really unpack that. So think of it like this. Step one, you have the initial spark, the yin and yang. The easiest way to picture this is a sperm and an egg coming together. That union then generates what the classics call the five elements, but what Dr. Wu means by this is the actual form and substance of the body, your tissues, your organs, all the physical stuff. And once you have the hardware, the physical form, then you can run the software. That's the 6-Qi, which is really just all the functional metabolic activity that makes you alive. Now, I want you to really lock in on this term, Qi-Hua, because it is everything in this system. Dr. Wu is very clear. This isn't some mystical, vague energy. Qi-Hua is the tangible biological process of your metabolism. It's turning your lunch into fuel. It's your lungs exchanging oxygen. It's the neurons firing in your brain. It's literally the process of being alive. Okay, so that's the theory, right? We go from yin-yang to physical form to actual function. But what does that actually look like inside a person? This is where Dr. Wu's model gets incredibly practical and honestly pretty cool. He turns this whole idea into a three-dimensional map of the human body. And this is a real game changer. He's saying, forget the flat 2D charts you might have seen. Think of your body as a volume, a space that's defined by three distinct vertical zones. You got a front, a back, and your sides. Just shifting from 2D to 3D completely changes the way you see things. And what's so great about this is how simple and, well, intuitive it is once you see it laid out. Taking a page from a classic text, Dr. Wu visualizes the body with a front zone, a back zone, and side zones. And this isn't just some random division. Each one of these zones corresponds to very specific systems and jobs in the body. And here's the cheat sheet, basically. The front zone, that's all about digestion and taking in nutrients. The back zone, think of that as your defense, your core constitution. And the sides, well, they're the pivot point, regulating everything and keeping it all in harmony. All of a sudden, the body has this clear, functional architecture. It just makes sense. All right, we've got the map. Now let's put it to work. How does a doctor actually use this to figure out what's wrong with someone? It turns out it simplifies the very first step of any diagnosis. This quote from an ancient text really hits the nail on the head. It says the very first thing a good doctor does before anything else is figure out, is this a yin problem or is this a yang problem? That's the fundamental fork in the road. Everything else follows from that one question. And check this out. Here is an incredibly simple, clear-cut rule that comes straight from that principle. If a patient has a fever,
and an aversion to cold at the same time, boom! The problem is originating in yang. But if they feel cold without a fever, that immediately tells you the illness is originating in yin. Just like that, you've cut the diagnostic puzzle in half.
Okay, so we've got the theory of creation, the 3D map of the body, and a clean diagnostic rule. But that brings us back to that huge question from the beginning, right? Where's the proof? Where's the science? Well, this is where Dr. Wu's work takes a turn that is just absolutely fascinating.
Get ready for a serious aha moment. There's this ancient principle that says yang is all about function, while yin is all about physical form or structure. So Dr. Wu's team put this to the test in a modern lab with tumor cells, and what they found was stunning. Warming herbs, which are considered yang, actually helped tumor cells restore their proper function. And cooling herbs, considered yin, directly stopped the tumors from growing. They control their physical form. It's a direct, modern validation of an ancient idea.
And the connections just keep coming. His research draws this incredible parallel to our own autonomic nervous system. You know, your fight or flight response, that's the sympathetic system. It's pure yang. And your rest and digest response, that's the parasympathetic system. That's yin. Even crazier, they looked at clinical data for ovarian cancer, which is seen as a yang deficiency disease. And they found that recurrence rates spike in the winter when sunlight, a natural source of yang energy, is at its absolute lowest. And I want to be clear, we're not talking about some tiny statistical blip here. The data showed that the recurrence of this cancer in the winter months is more than double what it is in the summer. That is a powerful statistical link between our health and the world around us. So Dr. Wu wraps all this up with this beautiful, kind of paradoxical idea. He says, to truly master medicine, you have to jump out of yin-yang without ever leaving yin-yang. What he means is you have to understand the principles so deeply that it becomes second nature. You can apply it intuitively, moving beyond rigid rules while always being guided by that core framework. So, if there's one thing you take away from all this, it should be this. Thanks to the work of people like Dr. Wu, we can see that yin-yang isn't just a pretty symbol. It's a dynamic, structured, and a scientifically testable framework for understanding the very mechanics of how life works.
And that really makes you think, doesn't it? If we can find this much depth by taking a fresh look at just one ancient idea, what else is out there? What other profound wisdom from cultures all over the world is just sitting there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to rediscover it?